Each and every Remembrance Day on the show, we try to pick a different location that is dedicated to telling the stories of the heroes that fought for us and those that continue to do so and to keep us safe. And we find ourselves in Brantford this morning at the Canadian Military Heritage Museum, something that I didn't even know was here. And maybe you're the same. Great to be with the chairman, Bob Ion. How are you, Bob?
Great. Welcome, Tim.
It is a wonderful facility. What is the museum dedicated to?
Like you said, the museum is dedicated to preserving the memories and the rich military heritage that is Brantford, Brant County, Six Nations, and the Canadian history of the men and the women who served and are still currently serving. We're to honor them, and that's what this place is all about.
And how does the museum run?
The museum is amazingly run all by volunteers. No paid people are here, and the volunteers have made it what it is through benefactors, through foundations, through grants. The memories and the artifacts that have come in from people and veterans are what made this place, and what started as an old industrial building in the old Massey Cockshut area is now really a destination that's second to none, really, in Ontario. We're really proud to have it.
How did you get involved?
I was always interested in military history, and when my grandmother gave me her father's medals and artifacts from the First World War, that really intrigued me and got me into researching and loving the history, especially my interest is the First War, but I just love this. I'm surrounded by this heritage. I come here on my retirement days all the time, and up there
all the way around, we're seeing photos. Who are the photos of?
These photos are veterans of the Second World War from Brantford, Brant County, Six Nations, like St. George, Paris, Brantford, and it's men and women, and we've really tried to restore the memories of these people for the public, because that's what we're here for, is to preserve this for them.
What does Remembrance Day mean to you?
Well, Remembrance Day is really, every day's Remembrance Day for me, because I can come down here in my retirement days and be surrounded by the history and heritage of these people that gave so much, and I'm just proud to be a part of it. I'm privileged and honored.
And people can come and see it for themselves.
People can come down here. We're open on Saturdays and Sundays currently until the end of November, but this is a place that people should be. It should be a destination for people
and young people to learn the history and to realize why we're here.
That's the thing. We have to hand this off to a younger generation, because the volunteers here are of a certain demographic that are really looking for someone to hand this off to.
We're going to spend the morning. We're going to show some of the artifacts, because there's some truly fascinating artifacts. We have a veteran from the Korean War and some great artwork here at the Canadian Military Heritage Museum on this Remembrance Day, lest we forget.
All the news I have for this letter, I will close at this time.
Well, good morning, and welcome back to the Canadian Military Heritage Museum in Brantford. Good to be back with Bob Ion, chairman of the museum. And within the museum, there are so many wonderful artifacts that tries to put you in, which is pretty impossible to do, put you in situations. And this is from World War I, one of the trenches, Bob.
This is a recreation of this would be the perfect trench. This would be dry now, but during the war, these duck boards were probably covered with a foot of mud. The soldiers had to sleep in the walls. You didn't go out and sleep in a room at night. You slept on the floor, or you slept dug a hole in the wall, and it was an awful thing. There was the lice, there was the shooting, there was the artillery. It's just something. It was a project we did really.
Off the top, we heard somebody talking there.
Yes.
And who was that?
That was a recreation of a Private Arthur C. Smith, and he was a young fellow from Dunnville, and he was killed in the First World War, and we have his letters in a case. And we hired an actor and had the actor read some of the actual letters that he had written to his mother and his sister during the First World War, including we are also fortunate to have the letter that the Padre wrote to his mother, saying that he had been killed at 20 years of age.
So August 18th, 1917. Private Arthur C. Smith. So these letters were donated to the museum?
Yes, yes. And this is where all the things come from. They come from the veterans, they come from the families, and it's our chore to preserve these things. We have to make sure that these artifacts, every artifact tells a story, so we have to make sure that we're the ones that tell the story for the future and preserve them.
And passing those stories to know what they went through.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just one of the wonderful artifacts that they have here at the Canadian Military Heritage Museum. We do have a veteran with us this morning from the Korean War. Luke, do you want to come back? Can we finish on, because we have Private Arthur C. Smith telling some stories again.
Yeah.
Let's come back and we'll finish there, and then we'll return. Once again, you're open on Saturdays and Sundays.
We're open on Saturdays and Sundays, noon till 4, till the end of November, but we will take tours if people want to phone and book a tour.
Lest we forget.
Is not the only thing going on out here.
Well, all morning on the show, we have heard stories from heroes that have fought for our freedom from world wars. And we're back in Brantford this morning, the Canadian Military Heritage Museum. Happy to be joined by Bob's wife, who we talked to earlier, Jane Ion, who's also involved in the museum and is very excited about this area of the museum.
Absolutely.
Because this is all about the liberation of the Netherlands.
The happy stories.
Yes, because
Yes.
there are happy stories to be told too.
There are very heartwarming stories.
Okay.
Yes.
Liberation of the Netherlands. When did the invasion take place of the Netherlands?
May the 10th, 1940,
Okay.
the Germans invaded, and where should we start?
You want to start? Well, I was going to go
Yeah.
here because
Okay.
this is a replica that you've made yourself. Okay?
Yes, absolutely.
And tell us about this skirt.
The skirt, the Mies Boyce van Lennep, she and her husband and her 3 sons all worked with the resistance. They hid fugitives in their home. They prepared false identification for them so they could escape the Netherlands. And they hid.
Because I just want to show it to it because that's the invasion
Yes.
of May 10th, 1940. Excuse my hand. And then just on the other side, that's the liberation. So it was May 5th, 1945. So almost 5 years to the day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Working with the resistance, she did go to concentration camp. She weighed 73 pounds when she was liberated from the concentration camp. And when she returned to the Netherlands after recuperating in Sweden, she promoted this idea that survivors would use materials from family members who were lost during the war, make these wonderful festival skirts or national skirts, incorporate the House of Orange triangles for Queen Wilhelmina, and embroider them with the special dates that they wore these skirts. And there were over 4,000 skirts registered in the Netherlands following the war.
Staying with clothes. What's this little coat here?
The Kretje family were also in the Netherlands. They had 3 young children. He was a mechanic, so he was forced to look after the German vehicles. They discovered what he was doing. They escaped to where Bob Elliott and the Canadian tank unit had already liberated part of the Netherlands. This 10-year-old dynamic little girl entertained the troops. They just thought the world of her. For Christmas one year, they took one of their army blankets, they donated buttons from their own uniforms, and made this winter coat for her.
And this is a book that is about the story of the Bob.
That was the story.
The little coat.
For the Chrétien's 50th anniversary, Bob Elliott was invited to come back to the Netherlands to see some of the Dutch families that he had liberated. He met the daughter, Susie. They got married and lived happily ever after, and they found that this is a replica of the coat, but the original is in the Netherlands for the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands.
Which was last year. Okay. I love all of this. War over. Okay. War over. Peace is won. Nazis give up. All of this stuff is.
These are all original newspapers from the after the war, after liberation.
And you can come and explore this because the Canadian Military Heritage Museum is open on the weekends for you to explore. It is a magical place, a valuable place, and seeing some of there is original artifacts that you've received too through donations. And the stories that are told from veterans, we've been hearing them all morning long. We have a veteran with us from the Korean War. We'll get to meet Len when we come back on Morning Live. And welcome back to Brantford, the Canadian Military Heritage Museum. And when you come here, what you can do on the weekends, you'll see photos all the way around the museum. And that photo right there is of a 20-year-old by the name of Len Hill. And Len fought in the Korean War. And we are so lucky to have Len with us this morning, along with Barbara Sutherland, who has created an installation. It's called In Their Own Words. Good morning, Len. How are you?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Let's talk to Barbara. Hello, Barbara. How are you doing?
Morning. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good to see you. Okay, what is In Their Own Words?
Okay, In Their Own Words is actually the words of the veterans. Instead of telling a story about veterans, taking their own words and putting it on the panels and let them tell their own story.
Okay, and where did you get the idea to do this?
Well, I got the idea basically from my family who, I have a few generations who were in the wars and military.
Can we show your dad?
You can show my dad.
Okay, where's your dad?
Yeah, my dad is right here. Art Sutherland, he was with the military in the 1st Canadian Army that went over in Second World War.
And is that some poetry that your dad wrote?
Yes, he was, he used to send poetry home to my mom, just to tell her basically what was going on in the field, but he wrote quite a bit, and that's where I got the idea for the rest of it, because so many others wrote very personal accounts of what they were feeling during the war.
Including somebody who's with us this morning. So can you tell us, we'll talk about Len in front of him before we talk about Len, because this is all about the Korean War,
yes,
okay?
It is, yes, and so we start with Ed Mastronardi up here, who was 2nd Battalion RCR, and his story tells about a very horrific 24 hours fighting off a Chinese battalion, and made a significant difference to the war. And then we have our lovely veteran here, Len, who was kind enough to let me interview him. And so this is Len's story and some of the photos that would go along with his story. The wire, there's so many references in the Korean War to the wire. And so that's why I've integrated the barbed wire.
Well, Len, what about wire in the Korean War? Why was there so much wire?
Well, not in my era. Back in the compounds, now I never saw the barbed wire, but I know it has existed, and it was just so they could control as much as they could of the POWs. That the North Koreans were they were very, very cruel to their prisoners of war. Lots of them were shot. We know that, and some of them were, as far as I know, there was some that was in concentration camps and their camps, but that's about all I know about the barbed wire.
What was your role in the Korean War?
I was a vehicle tech with the Tank Corps. I was with the A Squadron, Strathcona Horse from Calgary, and we had 3 squadrons. C, B, and A was over. We had to rotate every year. So C Squadron they were in the thick of it right at the start, and then it moved over into B Squadron. They moved up within closer a little to where we were with A Squadron. They were on 355. We moved up into 355 and dug the tanks in there. And then once the truce was signed, we had to pull back south to the demilitarized zone, and that's where the you start talking truth then.
What does Remembrance Day mean to you?
Oh, very much, because the one chap, we were together in the reserves, and we were only about 16, 17 years old, and we went to the regiment, and he got killed. Some shrapnel cut him open, took his life. I'm sorry.
No, so I appreciate you sharing. Okay, and
When then we lost 3 other guys. We lost 4 altogether in our regiment. Dave Neufeld, he was the one, my buddy. And then we lost another guy, Smilly. He was cut up pretty bad. And we had another like Gray. He died of hemorrhagic fever. He got bit by one of the rats. There was a lot of rats running around Korea. Of course, they were chewing on old dead bodies, whatever they could find to eat. And if you got bit with one, you're gone, because you just die of hemorrhagic fever, they called it.
we think about them today.
Oh,
We
yeah.
thank you for your service and all those that have served
You're welcome.
for all the wars. And we thank you, Barbara, for creating this installation here at the Canadian Military Heritage Museum in Brantford. You can come and experience it for yourself, learn more about valuable veterans like Len and so many friends that we lost, lest we forget.